Hey everyone, welcome to part 112 of my Pokemon game series in Unity. So in this video, we'll refactor dialogues and cutscenes to use the state stack architecture, and then we'll also refactor the about to use state of the Trianer Battle to use the state stack architecture. So let's look at how to do that. By the way, I started a new series on Patreon that covers how to make a 3D Pokemon game like Pokemon Legends Arceus in Unity. So if you're interested in making a 3D Pokemon game or a 3D RPG game in general, then you can check out this course on Patreon. So by becoming a Patreon, you can support this channel and get access to the 3D Pokemon series and get some other cool rewards like the complete project files of the series, some exclusive tutorials, and access to the Discord community. So before we start, I want to say a huge thanks to all the Patreons who are currently supporting the channel. You guys make the series possible, and I'm grateful to each and every one of you. So let's start the video. So right now, the dialogues in the game are not properly refactored to use the state stack architecture. So the issue with that is, if we start a dialogue with an NPC, then we'll be able to move the player around during the dialogue. Okay? So the reason for that is because if you open the game controller script, down here, you can see that we are still using the enum state for the dialogue. Okay? So instead of this, we have to create a dialogue state and push that during a dialogue. All right. So in the scripts folder, inside game states, I'll go ahead and create a new state called dialogue state. Okay. So let me get rid of the default code, and this is going to be a state of game controller. All right. And let me also make it a singleton. So first I'll create a public static instance of it. All right. And then I'll initialize it from the awake. Okay. So now when we start showing a dialogue, we can just go ahead and push the dialogue state. We don't have to store the previous state or anything because all those will be stored in our stack. All right. So we just have to go ahead and push the dialogue state to our state machine. All right. And once the dialogue is finished, we can go ahead and pop it. All right. So let's go ahead and test now and see if the issue is resolved. And before we test, we have to attach the dialogue state to our game controller. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, and now if we test, we should be able to move during the dialogue. Okay. So yeah, now I'm not able to move during the dialogue. So next, we'll have the same problem with the cutscene. So here, you can see that during the cutscene, while the NPC was walking towards me, I was able to move the player from his current position. Okay. So let's also fix that. So if you open the cutscene script, here, while playing a cutscene, we are calling this function in game controller, and this function will set the state to cutscene. Okay, and similarly, it will set it back to the free roam state once the cutscene is over. So instead of doing this, we have to push the cutscene state and pop it. So in the game states, I'll go ahead and create a new state for the cutscene. All right. And this will also be a state of game controller. And I'll also go ahead and make it a singleton. So let me create a public static instance, and then initialize it from the awake function. Okay, so now when we play a cutscene, we can just go ahead and push a cutscene state. So I'll just get rid of these two functions because we don't need that anymore. And I'll do it directly from the cutscene script. You could also do it from inside those functions if you want, but I'll just do it from here itself. Okay, so from here when starting the cutscene, I'll go ahead and push the cutscene state to the state machine. And then once the cutscene is over, I'll go ahead and pop it. Alright, so next, there is also another place we're using the cutscene. So in the game controller, if you look at the onEnter trainer's view function, from here we're setting the state to cutscene while the trainer is walking towards us to start a battle. Okay, so here we have to use the state machine instead of using the enum state. So I'll just get rid of this line, and before we trigger a trainer battle, we can push the cutscene state, and once we finish executing this function, we can go ahead and pop it. Okay, so since we want to wait for this function to complete, I'll actually do the pushing and popping of the state from inside this function itself. Okay, so at the start of this function, I'll go ahead and push the cutscene state. Okay, so let me just push it to the state machine. And once we finish the part where the trainer walked towards the player for starting a battle, then we can go ahead and pop the cutscene state. Right. So let me go ahead and just pop it from here. And after that, we will start the trainer battle. Okay. So that is all we have to do. So let's go to Unity and test if cutscenes and trainer battles are working. So before we test, we have to attach the cutscene state to the game controller. All right. So now let's go ahead and test. Okay. So now during the cutscene, I'm not able to move the player. Okay. But there is a problem. Our player is not playing the walking animation during the cutscene. So that is because to make our player play animations during the cutscene, we were calling the handle update function of the player character if the state was cutscene. Okay, so now we can just do that from the execute state of the cutscene. So let me go ahead and override the execute state. And from here, we can go ahead and call the handle update function on the player's character. All right. So now if we test, the player should play the animation during the cutscene. Okay. So yeah, now you can see that the cutscene is working fine. So next, let's also see if the trainer battle is working fine. So to be able to test trainer battles, we have to go to the next scene. So what I'll do is, I'll just disable the cutscene trigger for now so that we can go to the next scene. So in the hometown scene, I'll just go ahead and disable this prevent leaving cutscene trigger. And now let me go back to the gameplay scene and try testing. Okay, so now we can go to the next scene, and now if we go in front of the trainer, you can see that we can start the trainer battle and we don't have any issues. Okay, so next, there is one state that we have to implement in the trainer battle. So if you look at our run turn state here, if a Pokemon faints and if it's fainted Pokemon is a trainer's Pokemon. Then we have this about to use state where we tell the player that the trainer is going to use this Pokemon and you can switch your Pokemon if you want. Right. So when this happens, we're calling this about to use function in the battle system. So let me just search for that and see what we're doing from that function. Okay. So we're giving the player a choice to switch his Pokemon. So now we have to convert the state to use the state stack. Right. So let me go ahead and create a state for this. So this is going to be a battle state. So I'll create this inside the states folder under battle. Alright. So let me create a script called about to use state. And this is going to be a state of battle system. Okay. And let me also make it a singleton. So I'll create a public static instance and I'll just assign it from the awake function. Okay. So next, let me go ahead and override the enter function of the state. And from the enter function, first I'll cache a reference to the battle system, just like we do for all our states. All right. And next, we have to show this dialog and enable the choice box so that the user can select whether to switch the Pokemon or not. So we have to write these two lines of code in the enter function. So let me just go ahead and copy it here. And since you want to wait for this dialog to complete, we'll just create a new coroutine for executing it. All right, I'll just call it something like start state and I'll execute the dialog from it. Okay. And next we also have to enable the choice box after showing the dialog. All right. So we have a few errors here. So let's fix them one by one. So first, we'll have to access the dialog box from the battle system. So let me do that. All right. And we'll also have to access the trainer from the battle system. But the trainer is a private variable right now. So if we look in the battle system script, you can see that the trainer is a private variable. So let's go ahead and make it a property. All right. And I'll also just rename it and make the first letter an uppercase since it's a property. Okay. So now we can just use that property from here. All right. So next, we don't have access to the new Pokemon variable. So this is the Pokemon that the trainer is going to send out. And this was something that we passed as a parameter to the about to use function. Right. So now we can just pass it as an input to the about to use state. So let me create an input for this. Okay. I'll create a property for the new Pokemon that the trainer is going to send. And we can use that from here. So all the errors are fixed. So now we can just go ahead and call the start state function from the enter function of the state. So next, from the execute function of the about to use state, we have to handle the selection so that the user can select yes or no based on whether they want to switch the Pokemon or not. So we can look at our battle system script and see how we did that previously. So If the state is about to use, then we're calling the handle about to use function. And from here, we're just changing the value of a boolean. And if the value is yes, then we're opening the party screen and allowing the player to switch the Pokemon. And otherwise, we won't switch the Pokemon and continue the battle by sending out the next trainer Pokemon. Okay, so we have to do the same from the execute function of the about to use state. So let me just copy all this code and let me paste it into the execute function. Okay, so we have few errors here. So let's fix them one by one. So first, we need to define a Boolean variable for the about to use choice. So let me go ahead and define that. Okay, and that error should be gone. And next, we'll have to access the dialog box from the battle system. So let me change all the instances of the dialog box. All right. So next, if the user selected the yes option, we have to open the party string and let the user pick a Pokemon to send out. And otherwise, we can just continue the battle by sending out the next trainer Pokemon. Okay, so let's handle the no option first. So in the no option, we just have to call this function. So this is a function in the battle system, but it is a private function. So we'll have to make it public in order to use it from the about to use state. Okay, so now the error should be gone. So let me also change it here. I'll call battle system dot send next trainer Pokemon. So next, after sending out the trainer Pokemon, we have to go ahead and pop the about to use state so that we can continue the battle. So we should be able to wait for the send next trainer Pokemon coroutine to complete. And since this function is not a coroutine, we can't wait for it from here. So what I'll do is I'll put the send next trainer Pokemon function call in another coroutine. So here I'll just create a new coroutine called continue battle. Okay, and from this coroutine I'll call the send next trainer Pokemon and I'll wait for it using the shield return. And after sending out the next trainer Pokemon, we can just go ahead and pop the about to use state and continue the battle. Okay, so now if the option is no, then we just have to call the continue battle coroutine. Okay, so we can do the same if the X key is pressed from the about to use state. Okay, so let me go ahead and call the continue battle from here. And by the way, guys, I'm not making this a generic selector UI because this is a simple selection with just two options. So we can just handle it by using a simple Boolean variable. We don't have to use the generic selector UI. So next, if the option is yes, then we have to open the party screen and let the player pick a Pokemon to send out. So what we can do is we can just push the party state from here. So since party state is a state of game controller, we'll have to push it to the game controller's state machine. Okay, and I'll use push and wait from here because we want to wait until the player selects a Pokemon from the party state. Right, so I'll use the push and wait function and I'll push the party state. Okay, and since we want to wait for this, we'll have to put this in another coroutine. So what I'll do is I'll create another coroutine here and I'll just call it something like switch and continue battle. Okay, and let me put this push and wait statement inside this coroutine and wait for it using shield return. All right. So once the user selects a Pokemon from the party state, the selected Pokemon will be stored in the selected Pokemon property. So let me just store this into a variable for the ease of use. And if the selected Pokemon is not equal to null, then it means the player selected a Pokemon. Right. So in that case, we can go ahead and switch the player Pokemon by calling the switch Pokemon function. Okay. So here I'll just pass the selected Pokemon for the Pokemon to switch, and I'll wait for it by using the shield return statement. Okay. And once the switching is complete, we can go ahead and send out the next trainer Pokemon and then continue the battle. Right. So we can just call the continue battle coroutine from here. Okay. And then if yes is selected, we just have to call the switch and continue battle coroutine. All right. So yeah, we're almost done with the implementation of the about you state. But there is one more thing that we have to handle. The code for selecting the choice should only be executed once the choice box is enabled. Right. The thing is, the choice box won't be enabled immediately when we enter the state. Instead, it will only be enabled once this dialog is complete. Okay. So during that time, if we keep spamming the Z button, then we'll get an error. So we have to make sure that the selection code is only executed once this dialog is over and the choice box is enabled. So in here, we can create a property to check if the choice box is enabled. So I just create a Boolean property called is choice box enabled. All right. And we can get if the choice box is active or not from the active self property. Okay. And we can go ahead and use that from the execute function. And if the choice box is not enabled, then we should just return and we should not execute the selection logic. Okay. So yeah, this is all we have to do from the about you state. So now from our run turn state, if the fainted Pokemon is a trainer's Pokemon, and if the trainer has the next Pokemon for sending out, then we can just push the about you state. Right. So let me just add a braces here, and from here we can just push the about you state. All right. So I'll use the push and wait function because we want to wait until a choice is selected by the user. Right. So let me go ahead and do that. And I'll wait for it using the shield return. Okay. And by the way, before we push the about you state, we have to set the new Pokemon input. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So the new Pokemon will be the next Pokemon the trainer is going to send. All right. So we have refactored the about you state to use the state stack. So let's go to Unity and try testing this. So first, we have to attach the about you state to our battle system. Okay. And now let's test the game and start a trainer battle. So let me just beat this Pidgey so that the trainer will send out the next Pokemon. All right. Okay, we have a null reference exception. So let's see what's that about. Okay, so it's because we forgot to assign the battle system reference from the enter function. So let's go ahead and do that. And now if we test, it should hopefully work. So let me go ahead and start another trainer battle real quick. And let me just beat the first Pokemon. All right. So now you can see that after the first Pokemon of the trainer fainted, we're going to the about you state and we can select a choice. So if I select another Pokemon from here, we should send out that Pokemon and continue the battle. Okay. So yeah, the about you state is working fine. You can also go ahead and try testing the no option. That should also work fine. All right. So in this video, we refactored the dialog state, cutscene state, and the about you state to use the state stack architecture. So I'll stop the video here, and in the next video, we'll refactor using items from the battle. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you think this video is helpful, please leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel. That'll really help me out. And you can also support this series on Patreon if you can afford it. Alright, so thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.